Nice to be here. I'm going to run through a session at a very strategic and high level on empowering DLP excellence using Purview, obviously. So I'll get started, and hopefully we'll be able to get some questions at the end if you have any. So as with all of these sessions today, I'm just reminding that there are some great prizes to win today. So if you've got obviously take notes of the sessions, and you can hopefully get to win one of these fantastic prizes. So my name is Katie McMillan. I am a new Microsoft MVP for Purview Information Protection. And I work for Tesco Bank at the moment as a lead information security manager, but in the DLP and sort of CASB space as well. So I head up that offering within the bank. I previously worked for a couple of consultancies as well. So I've worked for Avanade previously to Tesco and a couple of managed service providers as well. So lots of security experience over about the past decade. I wanted to run through the definition of DLP for you today, first of all. So I'm pretty sure that you're probably all aware of the basics of DLP, but it's always good to set the scene and show exactly what I'm going to talk about today anyway. So DLP, data loss prevention, is the strategy and tools that will detect and monitor within your organization for sensitive data that is being accessed. In fact, for all data, not just sensitive data, to be honest, but it is focusing in on the sensitive data, and it can hit lots of facets within your organization. So there will be an email element, network element, endpoint element, and a cloud element to all DLP strategies. And it's really important to make sure that all of those elements are taken into account when looking at your DLP strategies as organizations. It's quite often one of the gaps within an organization that people maybe are a little bit fearful of getting involved in, or maybe they don't want to push themselves in that direction as yet because there are other priorities within the organization, like the vulnerability and threat management. But DLP to me is one of the cornerstones of data protection, and especially with this sensitive data. So why does DLP matter? So I've put some titles here just to get the conversation going almost. But it is from my perspective, the top reason for having a DLP strategy is to protect the sensitive data. And sensitive data, it has lots of different categories anyway, but in each organization it's different. But protecting that sensitive data is the reason that you put DLP in any organization. So that can be your personal identifiable information, for example. It can be credit card information. It can be specifically passports or driver's licenses. Things like that can all be protected with DLP. So protecting that data is really, really important, especially for an organization. Also, there are more and more regulations within any industry. So having that regulatory compliance is also massively important to the organization. It doesn't matter which types of regulations you've got there. It could be you might have a healthcare regulation like HIPAA, or you might be looking at credit card information like PCI DSS. Any regulatory compliance will require some kind of data loss prevention and functionality within the organization. There's also the element of maintaining trust. So any organization that has clients will need to maintain the trust within the organization. So your client needs to be able to trust your integrity and the integrity of your data and the integrity of their data that you're managing or processing. So maintaining that trust is paramount within DLP. You can use it as a mechanism to provide that to any kind of organisation that you're working with. It also minimises the risk of any kind of data breach. So if you have a bunch of data that is you're working with is personally identifiable, for example, you may want to minimise that risk so that that people aren't able to exfiltrate that data into anywhere else. That's also, you could have insider risk, which can be human-centric risk. So somebody may be accidentally sending the wrong data out, or it could be that somebody within an organisation is actively trying to take data from your organisation. So minimising that risk is another reason why DLP matters. Also, the operational efficiency. So having a DLP strategy means you're not then having to work through operational manual processes. You've got a way and a mechanism to alert or to stop data leaving the organisation that shouldn't be leaving it. It also puts a lot of checks and balances in place to ensure that you're being efficient and everybody's working to the same level. It also future-proofs the business. So depending on your DLP strategy and what you're using to implement, you can ensure that that you're working along the trend of DLP. So people will be able to implement a tool that is continually aspiring to be better, pushing forward based on the threat landscape, and that will then future-proof the business for the next level of threat that's coming. So that's my my snapshot of why DLP matters, I suppose, to me and to any organisation. So the common DLP challenges. The reason I put this in here and the reason that it's based on a jigsaw is because I see that DLP is a set of tools that are able to map out how you're going to protect your data. So from the common challenges come from lots of different industries as well. Obviously, I'm from a financial services background as well as public sector background as well. So you can I get to see a lot of different areas. So the challenges that I've seen are that DLP can be complex and difficult to understand. So if you're going to try and work through a strategy with your senior management, for example, having a complex strategy for DLP is not going to protect the data because implementing it is just too difficult to do. So it is really important that complexity doesn't put the block. There's also the data classification and tagging. So how do you classify your data and how do you tag it? How do you find that data? How is that then implemented into the tool to be able to push that into a protected state? People are nervous of that because the amount of data that a lot of companies hold is difficult. And that's what leads to the user resistance as well. Something's complex, something's difficult to be classified, difficult to tag, then the user is going to be resistant to it because it's hard. People don't want to have to jump through hoops to be able to do their jobs at the end of the day. There's also the challenge of false positives and negatives. You may, what we tend to do is tune that noise out within DLP, but having the false positives and negatives is a challenge because you might have a multitude of DLP alerts that come through that are not actually anything that we need to worry about. So making sure that that is a continual process is really important, and I'll go into that a little bit more. Also, the evolving threat landscape. So you put in a solution and you leave it there. There's nobody to keep up with that specific tool, and the evolving threat landscape means that it's just untenable and it's not something that's kept up to date. That will then lead to a tool that's in place, but something that's really not working for you. So that also leads through to regulatory standards, because regulatory standards also change. And the more regulatory standards come in, the more changes that may need to happen to your own DLP tools and your DLP landscape itself. So those regulations are kind of key to it. And it's another reason why it needs to be a continuous process. It's also, people worry that DLP is resource intensive. When it's done correctly, it doesn't have to be, but it does take some resource to implement and to set it up and configure it. And that does cause concerns for many organizations, because they don't have the resource to be able to provide to people in order to implement it. It's why it's important to have a DLP strategy, and something that's led from the top should always be a top-down approach. So now I'll go into talking a little bit about Purview and DLP. So we know, and you will know from all of the conversations that we've had today and the sessions and the fantastic sessions we've had with some brilliant specialists in the area, but Purview does offer a comprehensive suite of data loss prevention tools, and that they do help the organisation to protect their data. And we know that Purview is really a good tool to implement, because it will integrate with an awful lot of the tools that you're already using. So I've put in here some of the key components within Purview and DLP and what it can offer an organisation. So you've got intelligent detection and control. So you can use AI for the detection. There's a lot of configuration and control that can be embedded within the Purview tooling, and it is something that that you've got that assurance, because it's a Microsoft product, that it is it's a leading product, and it is something that's going to integrate with your tools, and you can then tick off all of the facets, the network, the endpoint, the cloud, and email all in one tool, which is absolutely fantastic. It's something that is trusted within the industries. You've got your unified policy management, a single console that will you'll be able to manage all of your policies from there. And because that's unified and touches upon your tool set, if you're running the Microsoft tool set, that gives you that assurance. You don't have to go to one console, manage everything. You've got your comprehensive protection as well, and as I've touched upon, because it's wide ranging and you can integrate with multiple tools, it is quite a comprehensive tool. You can label, you can configure your alerts, you can automate how the tool is working, or if you don't, you can do that in a tiered approach as well, to make sure that the resourcing is trained as time goes on, so you can phase that approach to be effective. Your automated workflows and alerts eases the intensity on the resourcing. So once you've gone through your processes, automating just makes it easier for people. It's not difficult to manage, because your automation is in place, and things will run themselves for a while. There's an easy deployment, so it's not hard to deploy the tooling. Your initial configuration may take some time, but actually deploying the policies is quite easy. As I'm sure you've seen, and I'm sure that lots of people have been through those workshops with you today. It's also an adaptive protection, so it's something that it can adapt to the organisation, it can adapt to the people within the organisation, and it can also adapt to the data. So you're able to have your sensitive information types, and they can be changed at any time. You can run your tuning, so that's adapting the process as well, and it is and it keeps up with all of the regulations as well, that things are adapting all of the time to that landscape. So as I said, it's more of a strategic approach to how we look to implement this session. So I put in here, and so how do we plan for the implementation? What are the steps that you need to look at an implementation of Purview data loss prevention from the very beginning, and what would you need to do? So I'm starting at the top, at the very beginning. You're identifying the stakeholders and the goal, because there are multiple stakeholders within the organisation, and you need to look at that from the top down as well. So you're looking at the senior leadership need to buy into this. There's no point in putting a brand new solution in if you haven't got buy-in from the organisation. So you may be looking at, for example, the CEO will need to sign off on it if that's who you sign off in your organisation, and then that will need to trickle through to the different strategic areas. Now, I'm all for governance, risk and compliance, and the way that is implemented in an organisation. But I do find that looking at the strategy, the business strategy of an organisation is what is important here. So if you've got your business strategy, which then feeds into your security strategy, which then feeds into your security objectives and goals. So you're not going to be able to just take, say, out of the blue, I want to implement a DLP solution, I want to implement Purview, let's do it. It will need that connection between your business strategy, business objectives, security strategy, and that security strategy then needs to hit those business objectives. So making sure that your DLP strategy hits your business objectives means that you're going to get through that gate, and that you're going to get people to buy into that. Also, looking at the goals specifically for your organisation means that you're then going to be looking at the types of sensitive data you're specifically interested in, and that's really key. And that leads us quite nicely onto the discovery of the data. So the reason that you need to run a discovery session before you have any DLP deployment is because you can't protect data you don't really have. So discovering all of your data within your organisation can be time consuming, it can be difficult, but putting the time in at the beginning, making sure that you know what data you have, you know what categories of data you have, will mean that it's so much easier to implement down the line. That discovery is can be across all of your areas, or you can do that as one area at a time, and it really just depends on the appetite for change and how you can look to develop that within your organisation specifically. It's very ad hoc, and it's very tailored to your organisation. You can then start to develop policies and define the scope of those policies. You can develop the policies based on the areas of the organisation, the users, how the types of work they're doing. Do you have a contact centre environment within your organisation who deal with card payments? Do you have a warehousing area of your organisation? Do you need different policies to apply to different areas? That's where your scope comes in. But your policies will be massively based on that data and the categories of data. You create your policies, and then you look to create your rules afterwards. So once you've developed your policies and your rules and defined that scope, you go into deployment and test phases. Now, I would always suggest from a deployment perspective that you run a phased approach where you're testing everything to begin with, because you never want to throw all of your policies in there, make a lot of noise, and then the tool's not going to be adopted because people don't want to go through difficulties and issues that haven't been tested along the line. So having a test group of people that you can run a pilot with and go through all of the relevant processes with, and then you widen that out to other areas of the organisation slowly, so that it's adopted slowly, and then you're not going to have pushback from the organisation. Also, automating and streamlining is the best way to get the best out of your policies and the best way to get the best out of DLP in general. So once your policies are in, and you've got all the right rules, everything's there, people are using it, and you've got a well operational sound solution, then you look to automate the streamline. And you can use that with the built-in workflows, or you can look to create your own and configure your own. Then looking to integrate with other security tools. So this is where your integration comes in, where you can integrate with Defender, you can integrate with Sentinel, you can integrate with third-party tools. You can bring any of the tools within your organization to integrate with Purview in order to enhance your DLP. And I'll go into a little bit more about integration and why that's important later on. Also, training the employees within the organisation to raise the awareness of data protection in general is a massive is a massive area that needs to be enhanced within any organisation. So, training and education, you can do that in many ways. You could have, if a larger organisation might have sort of DLP champions that they put out there who are trained by specialists, and then they pass that awareness and education down to their teams. It might be that you have sort of some frequently asked questions site, and you have a SharePoint site with lots of detail of how this all works, and making sure that that's passed down to the organisation will ensure that your DLP solution will work with your specific organisation, and people will use it, and that's really key. You won't have any more of that knowledge coming back with you. Also, the final area of implementation I find is regularly reviewing and amending those policies. It needs to be continual, and it needs to be continual for all the reasons that I said previously. So you might have the enhanced threat landscape, for example. Anytime your threat landscape is increases, you should be reviewing the policies. Different business areas, for example, might have different policies and different rules, and they should be reviewed on a regular basis, be that quarterly, be that annual. You need to be reviewing your policy regularly, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that as well. So I put a little bit here on the policy cycle, and this is specific to Purview, and it might be something that you've seen before, but I wanted to talk through it a little bit and go through how that would work for an organisation. Now, prioritising the data is sort of based on the classifications. It's also based on the classifications within your organisation. So prioritise the data from sensitive information types that are specific to you and how you work, and that will be a process that you need to go through quite regularly. So this is why it becomes a cycle. Then you categorise and label the data based on that prioritisation, and we talked through that a little bit earlier on, but it's very key to come back to that. After that prioritisation, if you categorise and label the data effectively and then establish the policies, you are then going through that process quite succinctly, and it's something that you can go back to and review quite seamlessly on your regular reviews. Once you've established those policies and what they need to be and what they need to be for those categories of data, that's when you will develop them, and then you develop those policies to adhere to specific configurations and how your organisation wants to manage that data. So be that a web policy that's put in place. So you might have if you want to block certain data going out through Dropbox, for example, you might want to do an integration with something like Defender for Cloud Apps, so you can stop people from being able to take data through an application. And you might develop a policy for that specific reason. If I use an end-to-end sort of example of this, you could say looking at personal identifiable information. That's a priority of data. That might be in your organization, that might be confidential. You've categorized it as a confidential piece of information, and then you can then label that data as personally identifiable information under the category of confidential. You can then establish a policy that says if somebody's trying to email out personally identifiable information, that sends an alert back to the organisation to alert them that this is trying to happen. You can block that, or you can just alert it, and people can go and review it and make sure there is no breach there. Then you can, so that would be developing the policy based on what you think those policies need to be. Once those policies are developed, you put that out there, then those alerts start to come through to let you know that that's what's happening with your organisation. Then from there, from the top level, you go down into your continual improvement process. Now, training your users is something that never ends. You always need to train your users, and you need to keep reminding them. It needs to be continual. You need to remind them on a regular basis. Be that through emails, be that through SharePoint, be that through a regular touch point with your users. But they need to know what's expected of them. And if they don't know what's expected of them and they're not aware of the DLP solution, it will fail. You need to make sure that your users are aware of that. So after you train your users, you monitor your outcomes, you monitor what's coming in, you monitor your alerts that are coming through. And then if you're getting a lot of false positives, false negatives within those outcomes, you can tune those policies. You can make sure those policies are still working for you. And you can, as part of your review process, keep tuning them. So that again is a continual process. You tune your policies, and then you monitor your outcomes again, and you tune your policies again. So you think a regular activity that needs to happen all the time. There we go. So I wanted to talk. So this is sort of my last area that I wanted to talk through, which was is very specific to integration, and the reason that integration is important for Purview, and the reason that it actually benefits an organisation. So we know that that Purview is cloud native. You've got your unified policy management and a consistent user experience. So everybody's going to have the same experience, but it's consistent each time that the policies sort of step through within the organisation. And you can use Purview for all of your data that's currently in use, either data in motion in transit or data at rest, and that will then you'll be able to maintain that. So you can have your data encrypted and based on the labeling that that is applied to your data. You can and that can be making sure that that's encrypted in motion. For email policies, you can have that for making sure that the protection for data in use, making sure the labels are applied for data that's currently being used, a process, and any data at rest, making sure that all of your labels are in place for anything that's at rest, and confidential data stays confidential. And you're still then protecting the availability of data, the integrity of data, and the confidentiality of data. Now, the integration points from Microsoft perspective. So Microsoft 365 integrates with Purview seamlessly. So you have Exchange, you've got all of your Office applications. SharePoint will integrate, OneDrive integrates seamlessly, and so does Teams. That then gives you, if you have a fully Microsoft estate, you're in a position where everything's protected seamlessly because it's all Microsoft. It's seamless. It's easier to integrate with something that you're already using. So endpoint machines. So you obviously Windows machines and are protected. and are integrated seamlessly. But also Apple devices are also integrated, are easy to integrate with the cooling. And anything when you're looking at web policies, anything in Edge and anything in Chrome are also seamlessly protected in that way. You've got your non-Microsoft apps as well, Sue. So you've got Google and Workday and ServiceNow are all part and integrated. Salesforce and Dropbox as well, also integrated and easy to integrate. And also all on-premise file servers are easy to integrate with DLP as well. So making that integration and the integration with other Microsoft tools such as Sentinel and Defender are kind of key to making sure that that you evolve your DLP solution. It's not just about putting the policies in place, making sure they're running and tuning them. Integrating with your other tools will mean that you can manage the threat more effectively. You can pull in your Sentinel and Defender logs to determine if there are new or improved policies that can be implemented, or if there are new threats that are coming through. It can also link to your compliance, so you can look at you can comply with different regulations, and your policies can do that for you. So you don't then need to be reviewing your regulatory stance, because you know that Purview is doing that for you, which is a benefit of having that in place. From an integration standpoint, there's much wider breadth to it, and it isn't something that I'll go through in depth today, but it is something that you can look at from looking at all of these sensitive information types and how they interact with the different tools within your on your devices, and ways and means that role-based access control and the like can assist in policy management as well. So that is so that's my last point on integration now. I think that I've that is my last slide today, but I wanted to just finish up and say that from a Purview DLP perspective, my takeaways here are: start with a strategic approach, make sure that you've got buy-in from the organisation, and look at the tools that will integrate with your solution, and how the other benefits that Purview can bring to you. So I think that presently, if you're looking at a brand new integration, it can only enhance your security posture. You're never going to get a DLP solution that makes things worse. So it's definitely something that is that we should be advocating for across all organisations. And that's everything. But thank you very much to our sponsors today, and thank you for listening.
I'd say thank you for having this. Thank